Good evening and welcome to the Town Board Work Session for June 21st. I'd like to call this meeting to order. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Draw.
Here.
Cole is absent. Lee.
Here.
Ockenden.
Here.
Thank you. Board, you have the minutes of May 17th before you for approval. Can I hear a motion and a
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
second? Moved and seconded. Can we have a roll call, please?
Draw.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
All aye.
Okay, thank you. There are no monthly reports to come in. There are no guests this evening. So we move to action items. First one is the 2023 New York State Consolidated Funding Application Resolution supporting town's application of state funds. And this will be, I will turn this over to Ms. Carrie Ivers from our Director of Development, that she's going to give us a little rundown on this. Thank you,
So I'm
Carrie.
asking for the town board's approval to prepare a resolution for the July 5th meeting that would be acknowledging the town board's awareness that we're going to be pursuing some grant funds through the consolidated funding application process for 2023. For sure, we've identified two funding opportunities, one through the local waterfront redevelopment revitalization program to potentially fund the LaSalle's Landing restroom or comfort station. That's going to seem super familiar because we made that attempt last year. We got some good feedback, and we're going to make some tweaks to the application, and we're hoping for a better outcome this year. We're also going to be pursuing some funding for some MS4 mapping, some GIS mapping funds that are available. That's going to help to document current conditions. That's really helpful to have in the form of GIS. Super helpful tool for staff to be able to identify, maintenance and, just opportunity to track what we have. There may be some other funding opportunities, so we might keep the resolution fairly broad.
Okay.
But the resolution just is something that's required from the funding, either that or a letter. And since we are way ahead of schedule on our preparations, we thought we would ask for the resolution.
So to confirm, we were not awarded the grant.
We were not awarded the funding last year through the LWRP. Only 3 projects were awarded in our entire Finger Lakes region, and the biggest one of them went to the city of Rochester. They had a limited, obviously, pot of funds available.
Sure. But where I was getting was you would still need a new resolution for the new fiscal year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'm going to make a motion that we prepare the resolution to support the town's pursuit of these identified grants.
I'll second that.
Thank you.
Moved and seconded. Thank you, Ms. Ivers. Roll call vote, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
All aye.
Thank you. Next, our local law to revise Chapter 94 of the building construction to remove sheds from the exempt list. Ms.
Yes.
Ivers.
I'll give a quick explanation. So we utilized the model that was provided by New York State Department of State. When we were reviewing that, we talked about the idea of removing sheds from the exempt list. And doing the multiple iterations of the local law, that change never got made. And so because this is a change to the code, we do need to do it in the form of a local law. It's a very minor change. It's just striking sheds from the list of exempt. So the reason the building department wants sheds to be subject to a building permit.
I'm listening. Go ahead.
It's the reason the building department, the way the language reads is the state was allowing up to a shed size of 144 square feet. That could be upwards of, a 10 by 12 shed. If we're doing the math, a 12 by 12 shed could be constructed without a building permit. And without a building permit, folks don't know where their property lines are. They don't know where easements are located. Often sheds get constructed in the wrong place because people don't know any better. And it's not until they pull a permit through the town that they understand sort of where the shed can go from a zoning perspective. So the state's exemption creates some difficulties at the local level when people put sheds on the wrong part of even off their property. And we see that sometimes today. We have properties come in and the shed that they think belongs to their house was actually constructed on their neighbor's yard.
So is this just putting us back to where we were
Yes.
previously?
Correct.
So
So this was an item that was not exempted in the previous version of the building construction town code, but because it was included in the template that the state
From
provided.
the state.
We didn't catch it in time before it was adopted.
So it doesn't match what we historically have followed as far as
Correct.
issuing permits for those types of
Yes, yeah, correct. We've always done permits for sheds.
Okay, so just making us back to where we should have been.
Correct.
And so we've kind of got it fast-tracked so that, because you got to have a public hearing, because it's like a typo, but you can't just fix it. You can't just edit it. You got to go through the local law process. So it's really kind of public hearing, and then I would anticipate the board would then adopt it right after the public hearing so that.
I tried to fast, it couldn't do it.
How much is the cost for the permit to build a shed?
I'd have to double check. It varies. It's for residential. If you hold on for 1 second, I can tell you.
So it's helpful to know that there was precedent for this.
Yeah.
I wasn't
Yes.
aware, okay.
Yeah.
'Cause I-
And to that point, knowing where people put these buildings, I think is real important to make sure there's a process that's followed and.
And that's when we've seen hold harmless agreements, people put them in or want to put them in areas we've got drainage easements, storm sanitary sewers, so often until they come in and get their permit, then no one, or they don't look at and are aware that there's other stuff in that area or it's over top of a utility. So having that control to know where they are, where it can or can't be, side setbacks, all that stuff kind of forces them to come in, look at the property, look at where it's going.
I think
then
mine
make
was
sure it's-
$85, but I can't remember what year I did it.
I thought it was 75 or 80.
So this is just helpful to know. I think when I reviewed this prior, I was, kind of hesitant that it's not like adding an addition to your house where I would treat that as requiring more government oversight, but something like a shed for my lawnmower, I was really, to have it go through the whole process but again, understanding now that this is what it was prior and
Yeah,
that
this isn't
we're reverting to what the process was previously. I just didn't want it to be a new
yeah.
thing where the public wouldn't.
And Candace,
The biggest issue, I think, I'm sorry.
no, you go on. Go, Pete.
One of the biggest issues that I've found when I've represented the zoning board is people will often, they won't know about it. They'll get a shed, they'll put a shed and they'll put it like in the setback. And then they go to sell the house, and one of the things they have to certify is that it's
Right.
all up to
Yeah,
code and everything. And then they
yeah.
realize they have to go get a permit and they have to get a variance because a lot of times they put the sheds up in the setback, which is a problem.
Sure.
So it happens a fair amount. So, you want to keep them out of the setback and out of easements and whatnot. Now, they could get a variance if they need to.
Right.
but-
Okay, no, that's helpful. Again, I definitely understand the interest that a government would have with the oversight. It was just trying to balance, like, really, guys, it's a shed, but
We're not different than
I did
other
not
towns.
build a shed without the town knowing. I just want that
that's
to be clear. Okay,
And-
I'm all set,
And
thank you.
Candace, every town, it has a requirement on this. We're no different, the city of Rochester as well. So Penfield's no different than any other town, so,
Yep, I'm good,
Good.
thank you.
Perfect. Okay.
So.
Would you
need
like
motion
a
to move
motion for set of
forward
public hearing?
to move
Sure.
forward for public hearing on this matter.
I'll second.
Perfect. Moved and seconded. Can we have a roll call vote on that, Sue?
Draw,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
All aye.
Great, thank you. Next, item C is a request for the abandonment of an easement at 63 Canyon Trail. Mr. Valentine.
Thank you. So in the board's drop, I provided the attached photo that Ms. Ivers is bringing up on the screen. When this house was originally built, there was 3 lots considered for that property. They've since consolidated those, so there is no need for us for access into their property. So they're asking for the abandonment of that. We would like, in exchange for that, as Carrie's moving the hand over, there is a storm drainage easement on the end. Swap for that. I don't think that was officially filed. We couldn't file the filing of it. It is referenced on the map. So we'd like to refile that to make sure. We've talked to the homeowner, we've talked to their attorney. They're agreeable and, to that. So if the board's, amenable to it, would be a resolution to abandon the existing access easement and just going through open area of their property. I think they have plans to add an addition on, and that's kind of in their way of that. And then at the same time, formalizing that drainage easement that's on that south end.
Questions?
Is that going to be one and the two, the same?
Yep.
Okay.
I have no questions.
Okay.
Okay, I'll go ahead and make a motion that we prepare the resolution for both the abandonment of the easement at 63 Canyon as well as the storm sewer easement for the part that the town would need access to.
And I'll second that.
Can we have a roll call vote, Sue?
I'm sorry, Draw,
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
All aye.
Thank you. Next is, again, Mr. Valentine, the Ellens Creek Stream Restoration Project bid update.
Yeah, so as the board knows and sharing with the public, unfortunately, we did not get any bidders for our project. We have informed all the neighbors. Once we got the permit, it was kind of later in the season. We said, let's go for it. We'll try to get it done this summer. And then the timing of kind of getting everything together, we did get it out to bid. Some of the contractors just had concern of the timing because we're very limited of the time we can be in the stream. So we can be in the stream from June 15th to October 1st. Others were busy, so we didn't get any bidders. They gave us some feedback. Obviously, we'd like to get it out sooner in the bid process, so looking to put that on hold right now, but like to come back to this board November, December, put that back out to bid earlier, get the board authorized to go at that again. We've let the neighbors know that, kept them in the loop, let the adjacent property owners know that as well. Everybody says, great, thanks for keeping us, in the loop. No one had any major concerns with that, but if we can hopefully get that out November, December, it'll be out in the streets and then take bids in February or March, then we'll be fully prepared. They can have as much time to prepare, stage materials, get ready so that everything's there and ready June 15th. They're working in the stream and, in compliance with the permit.
When's it run till? June 15th?
June 15th to October 1st is what we can be in the creek. They can do, out of creek stuff after that, but that's a very tight time frame. So everybody wanted enough time to get prepared, stockpile their materials, stage, get everything ready, be right at, the creek's edge, and then, jump into it from there.
So Mark, I had a question. I know that we talked about this because you and your team were out there walking, met with all the neighbors on numerous times, and you'll have to start from scratch again and that whole process again?
Thankfully, we've got the neighbors' contact information now, the emails, the phone numbers, so they've been, kind enough to share that with us. We've kind of got an email group. Obviously, if somebody changes, we'll meet with them and go if a property sells. The rest of the neighbors, we'll continue to keep them in the loop through the fall. So hopefully it's not a starting from zero again. We've got everybody's information. We've walked with them. Everybody, was on board with it. They'd all signed the releases. The adjacent property owners had given us access. So everybody, basically said, yeah, thanks for the information. We're good. No issue. So hopefully we're not starting from ground zero. Once again, we can just kind of email everybody, go, hey, we went back out to bid. We've got ABC contractors, and we're looking to come back in next summer. And everybody should go with that. If we've got a new homeowner or a new business owner, obviously we'd let them know.
Is the 6 months sufficient lead time now?
Yes.
Okay.
Good. Disappointing, but we'll move on.
Yeah, so actually, there should have been an informational item, my mistake.
That's
There's
fine.
no action from the
That's
board
fine.
tonight, just
Good.
updating the board.
Thank you for the update. Next, we have 1401 Empire Boulevard, the Pets at Peace special use permit and site plan application follow-up. Ms. Ivers.
Yeah, so as this board knows, we had the public hearing earlier. I wanted to put this on the agenda to follow up. And if the board is amenable, I would prepare a resolution to approve the special use permit and issue the site plan approval. We'll include the typical conditions as part of that approval, that they obtain, the final sign off from the town engineer and address all of the PRC comments, and as well as any other agency permitting that's required through New York State DNT and others. I wasn't aware of any other special concerns or issues just based on the type of operation. I'm not sure if there's any other conditions that the board would want me to add, but certainly happy to chat about that and if there's any issues or concerns.
Can you remind me, please? I'm seeing that their design deviated from our standard construction and design protocol.
Yeah, so, and Greg McMahon is here to chat about that if needed. One of the comments from the PRC was that the drive aisle didn't meet the minimum requirement, but that's certainly something this town board can waive as part of its approval. I'll call that up and bring it up onto the...
The area in the aisle they're showing is actually going back to what would be parking for their employees. So it's not Normally, if it was public access, I'd have a little more concern about the two-way traffic for that, but just looking at our code, if it's employee only and they're coming in the morning and going at night, it's not a major thoroughfare to go in through for a 24-foot wide aisle. They're showing it at 16 feet, 16 feet, is navigable, is manageable. If it was public access in the back, I'd have a little bit more concern with that, but that's just what our design criteria requires, so that would be one item that is part of your review and approval process. If you were, willing to waive that piece, then they could continue to move ahead on that.
Were there any comments by PRC, or was it just a notation of such?
That was just our one comment, is just
Okay.
that this doesn't meet our standard spec. You'll need to get a waiver from the town board, but that action can be taken at the same time as your approval.
I'm sorry, you said it typically is
It's
20?
24 for drive aisle, just for backing out. This doesn't have any backing out, as Ms. Ivers is pulling up the site plan, and again, it's with employees in the back, so it's
So no
not.
access for emergency vehicles or anything of that nature?
And it was shared with the fire marshal, and he was comfortable with, with that. It's just that access aisle it's on the east side, but at the top of your
Forgive me, this is not going so well.
top of your page, if you can highlight that aisle there. So the public parking, if there is any, would be in the front. They can access that parking lot. That access aisle there into the back, they made it a little skinnier trying to deal with the grade. They've already got a retaining wall, some stuff to get back there, and then it would be employee-only parking in the back. So I don't see that being a major issue, but had to highlight it as, it didn't meet our
Yeah, sure.
exact spec.
And the fire marshal reviewed it, and it meets their requirement for emergency vehicle access.
All right.
Did we get a I'm sorry.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Did we get a waterfront assessment form on this one? I assume it's in the LWRP.
We did.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry.
And as part of the approval, there would be a memo to that effect.
Yep.
So if, say that the board approves this now and the business changes ownership to become a restaurant or something like this, such that the back lot would be accessible or needed by the public, can you just walk me through that process?
Yeah, they'd have to come back before this board for the change of use anyway, so we would revisit it, look at that time and see again if it was employee, if they need to expand their parking based on, the occupancy of the building, if it's, something different than what it is. So it would come back before this board and we would re-review that at that time. So it doesn't, it's a little different than a variance. It doesn't automatically carry with the property. It's project specific, where if you granted a variance or something from the code, for front setback or something that carries with the land. Here, you're just granting a variance for this specific project.
Is that retaining wall already there, or is that going to be built?
That's something that they're building.
Is this something that happens occasionally? Did you
It does.
see-
We've got roads that are 16 feet wide. Off of Creek Street, we've got a couple of our roads that are 16 feet wide, and people manage two-way traffic, so it's not unpassable. It's not a, very substandard. We've got roads that, people live on every day that, that work and function, so it's not a major issue on our end, but just something to note for the board.
Word,
Okay with it?
can we have a?
I'll make a motion to approve that and go with the 16-foot drive aisle.
I'll second that.
Moved and seconded. Sue, can we have a roll call vote?
So motion, just to clarify, so motion to prepare a draft approval resolution.
That would be correct, thank you.
Thank you. Pete.
Draw.
Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Ockenden,
Aye.
all aye.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you. Okay, next up is 2254 Penfield Road, an administrative approval change
Thank you. Have a good night.
in ownership. Thank you, Greg. Ownership of existing dental practice. Ms. Ivers.
Yeah, so maybe this will feel familiar to you. Last year, we had an applicant come in who was buying this existing dental practice at 2254 Penfield Road. It's located in the Planned Unit Development District. The regulations for that district indicate that changes in use, changes in operator, or changes in owner require a new special use permit to be issued. And so when the new the prospective buyer, owner who's here and can answer any questions, came in to make application, I'm going to recommend administrative approval by this board to issue this special use permit administratively, which is what we did for the last applicant when they bought the practice. So changes in practice ownership, take place. It felt like a pretty straightforward administrative application.
Dr. Doi, did you want to come up and just introduce yourself to the board? We'd love to meet you. Sure. Any of the, yep. So we know it's pretty straightforward. You're purchasing that from Dr. Rosen?
That is correct.
And
So currently, Dr. Rosen purchased it from Dr. Feldman. I'm in the process of trying to purchase it from Dr. Rosen, very final bits of it, but I had to apply for the special use permit changeover beforehand. So I'll be assuming duties and functions of being the dentist at the location. Current operating hours are Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, 8 to 5. I wish to expand that to a full business week, Monday through Friday, but slowly but surely.
and how many employees will you have?
Currently, it's me, dentist, 1 front desk, 2 hygiene, and 1 assistant.
Okay, 5 total.
Yes.
Okay. Board, any questions or?
Did we discuss signage back at that time? Was there?
So we did, and I think
How did
the
we end up?
applicant came back and had some draft signage. I'm not even sure if the signage ever got replaced.
No,
It didn't.
it's the same old one for New
Okay.
Renaissance,
Yeah, I
yep.
don't remember.
Yeah, and I think at the
approving
time, when Dr. Rosen bought it, he was keeping the name for the same for the time being.
okay.
I don't know if Dr. Doi has same plans or will change it eventually.
Yeah, not right now, potentially eventually, but I figure I'll be back for that.
Yeah, so as I mentioned to her that if the signage were to change, that would be subject to town board review, and it's certainly something that we'll address as we would include that as a condition.
So board would be looking for an approval change of ownership.
I think it'd be authorizing me to issue the administrative special use permit. And I'm looking to our town attorney to make sure I said it correctly.
That's for a special permit, right?
Sounded right?
Yeah, authorize the administrative processing of this application.
Absolutely. Could we have a motion?
Oh, yeah. I was sure if you had a comment. Yeah, I think this is a perfect use case for it since it's the nature of the practice is remaining the same and it seems to be more of a formality at this point. So if there are no other comments, I'm going to go ahead and make a motion that we authorize for administrative approval for the special use permit.
And I'll second that.
Thank you.
Okay, moved and seconded. Sue, can we have a
Draw.
roll call vote? Aye.
Lee,
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
All aye.
Thank you very much, Dr. Doi.
Thank you.
Good luck, Dr.
Welcome. Welcome to Penfield.
Yeah.
We're happy you're here. Okay, next on the agenda here is 1225 Empire Boulevard, application for a special use permit and site plan for K2 Brewing operations support and ancillary
Ancillary.
parking. I'm sorry, I can't talk tonight. I apologize.
So I will bring this up. This is the property that is the former and recently vacated Agway property. I'll bring it up so everyone can see it at home. The K2 Brothers Brewing has a contract to purchase the property with the hope that they could use it to provide support to their current operations at 1225 Empire Boulevard, and also use the existing site as for ancillary parking as well. They did provide an application, a complete application, including the waterfront assessment form. And so I'm requesting a resolution to set the public hearing for this matter to consider the special use permit and revised site plan associated with their taking over of the property. Again, this is, they're in contract currently, and the town board's review is a contingency of that contract.
Great. All right.
Can I hear from Mr. Weishar? So I saw several items like the waterfront assessment form as well as the seeker study. Was there any notable items that you think we should be aware of in terms of environmental concerns before moving forward?
I didn't see anything in those, but it is, I believe it's in a floodplain. So there's restrictions on what can be done without, I think Mark can speak better to this, but my understanding is that the nature of what's proposed shouldn't trigger any of those requirements, because I think what's proposed is basically a reuse of an existing building and then just repair of a parking lot and restriping, I believe.
Yeah, from a seeker standpoint, it's being deemed a type 2. It qualifies as a type 2 action, which means no further seeker, environmental analysis is required. However, being located with floodplains and wetlands located, even with or without the seeker, there's some requirements that they'll have to meet or ensure that they're not, generating the need to comply with.
Yeah, they're not looking to add any new structures, not looking to put anything new in the floodplain. There is some wetland down there, so you're getting that delineated around the edge to know, what the limits of that are. But as they've initially shared, they're just looking to use the property as is, so.
And then I saw from the assessment form that it's using the existing gravel, other than, it sounds like cosmetic or very superficial changes. It's nothing that's going to be disturbing the land or the areas around.
Exactly, and that's, we made clear with them, as if they're looking to expand the parking, fill, whatever, that would trip, issues, concerns with the floodplain, but they're looking just to do some basic maintenance, clean up the property, stripe some parking spaces, and then, use the existing buildings as they are.
Okay, and I don't know if this is premature, given that the transaction hasn't gone through, but are we treating this as separate from the proposed expansion of the parking lots in the rear? Do we know, it wasn't clear from the application of whether or not this would help with the overflow with the parking situation. I see that they're planning to store some materials and other operational needs on that property, but.
Yeah, they are showing new striping of parking, so that might be a question that the applicant could address during the public hearing component.
Okay.
If that would be okay with you, I'd rather not
Yeah.
speak on their behalf about what
Sure.
their intention is for use of this property versus the ancillary parking lot that was proposed in the rear.
Okay. I think it would just be helpful to know how much additional parking would be used in this, what's the former Agway.
Yeah, and certainly we'll make sure, I'll advise the applicant to be able to address that as part of their presentation to the board on the night of the public hearing. Because we're looking at setting the public hearing, we do have a resolution included later in this legislative session that's being held after this meeting.
Right, I understand for timing purposes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm all.
Okay, yeah, I am too. I'll make a motion to move forward with scheduling a public hearing to consider a special use permit for 1225 Empire.
Great.
For a resolution to be prepared for the setting of
For
the
the
hearing.
public hearing.
I'll second that.
Moved in second. Roll call vote, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
All aye.
Perfect, thank you. Done with our action items. Informational items, I really just have one, and maybe Ms. Ivers, you can chime in on this if you want. Update on the Clark House. Last week, we met with Ms. Ivers as well, Mr. Tate, myself, and our Historic Board, Preservation Board Chairman, Tom Combs, met to discuss with the developers, Bergman, for the Clark House property, met to look at their concerns, comments presented. These were all taken back from the Historic Board, their suggestions given back to Bergman. They're taking them and going to incorporate them into the design process, update and give us get back to us on that. Carrie, I just really a brief.
Yeah, I think you summarized that well. I think their next, Bergman took in that feedback. They are going to come up with an additional concept or some revisions to the concept they have now that reflect those comments. And I think the next step would be to present those ideas to the Historic Preservation Board before coming back to this board, so that there's a sense of buy-in and that the next iteration is moving toward the requirements of the certificate of appropriateness that the Historic Preservation Board would need to issue.
And we'll share those with the board as well, the comments that are coming back as well for you guys at a future work session. We'll bring that all back for discussion after as you said, the Historic Board takes a look at it too. Any questions, board, on that? No. Okay, so that's it. I have no held items tonight. I have no old business. Board, any new business? Seeing none, our next work session will be on July 19th, 2023. So I will adjourn this meeting at 6:30. And stay tuned, in a few minutes, we'll have a special legislative session. Thank you.